Hello from St Helier, the British Channel Island of Jersey, just about 100 miles or so off the south coast of mainland UK, closer to France actually. And I'm here for a couple of days down at the marina, just outside St Helier itself, and off to my right hand side, the beautiful bay of St Helier over there. Nice long beach just on the coastline, as you might be able to make out, and the marina behind me, which is lovely. Some beautiful crafts there for some of the rich that come here, a bit of a tax haven. And out over my left shoulder there now, the Elizabeth Castle, sitting off the mainland, a beautiful Tudor castle was steeped in history here in Jersey. It's possible to get over there. You can actually walk when the tide's out along a little causeway. Haven't ever managed to do that yet. The tide's always in when I've been here, but there is a small craft you can take, a small ferry boat, which will deliver you straight to the island for a walk around. Apparently well worth doing, but I'm looking forward to doing that one day. But I'll just pop you back on the wall here as I explain to you what we've got today. Actually starting a new book alongside the one I'm already reading. This is called The Wager, a bit different sort of book that I would normally read, but it looked interesting. I picked it up on the bookshelf. It's by author David Grann. It's a non-fiction piece, which is unusual for me to read. It's a tale of shipwreck, mutiny and murder. So let me read the blurb on the back. According to Spectator, it says the greatest sea story ever told. The blurb reads, 1742, the year 1742, a ramshackle vessel of patched together wood and cloth washes up on the coast of Brazil. Inside are 30 emaciated men, barely alive, survivors from The Wager, a British vessel wrecked while on a secret mission to raid a Spanish treasure-filled galleon. They have an extraordinary tale to tell. 6 months later, an even more decrepit boat comes ashore on the coast of Chile, containing just 3 castaways with their own, very different account of what happened. The 30 sailors who landed in Brazil, they maintain, were not heroes. They were mutineers. As accusations of treachery and murder fly, who is telling the truth? The stakes are life and death, for whoever is guilty could hang. So, interesting, quite good to read. It's actually a book of, I think, 5 parts, and around about, let's see, 260 pages. And I'll read to you, first of all, a note from the author and a prologue before we get into chapter 1. Author's note. I must confess that I did not witness the ship strike the rocks or the crew tie up the captain, nor did I see firsthand the acts of deceit and murder. I have, however, spent years combing through the archival debris, the washed-out logbooks, the mouldering correspondence, the half-truthful journals, the surviving records from the troubling court-martial. Most critically, I have studied the accounts published by those who were involved, who not only witnessed the events, but also shaped them. I tried to gather all the facts to determine what really happened. Still, it's impossible to escape the participants' conflicting and at times warring perspectives. So instead of smoothing out every difference or further shading the already shaded evidence, I've tried to present all sides, leaving it to you to render the ultimate verdict, history's judgment. And we'll move on to the prologue. The only impartial witness was the sun. For days it watched as the strange object heaved up and down in the ocean, tossed mercilessly by the wind and the waves. Once or twice the vessel nearly smashed into a reef which might have ended our story. Yet somehow, whether through destiny, as some would later proclaim, or dumb luck, it drifted into an inlet off the southeastern coast of Brazil, where several inhabitants laid eyes upon it. Above 50 feet long and 10 feet wide, it was a boat of some sort, though it looked as if it had been patched together from scraps of wood and cloth, and then been battered into oblivion. Its sails were shredded, its boom shattered. Sea water seeped through the hull, and a stench emanated from within. The bystanders, edging closer, heard unnerving sounds. 30 men were crammed on board, their bodies almost wasted to the bone. Their clothes had largely disintegrated. Their faces were enveloped in hair, tangled and salted like seaweed. Some were so weak they could not even stand. One soon gave out his last breath and died, but a figure who appeared to be in charge rose with an extraordinary exertion of will and announced that they were castaways from His Majesty's ship The Wager, a British man of war. When the news reached England, it was greeted with disbelief. In September 1740, during an imperial conflict with Spain, The Wager, carrying some 250 officers and crew, had embarked from Portsmouth in a squadron on a secret mission to capture a treasure-filled Spanish galleon known as the prize of all the oceans. Near Cape Horn, at the tip of South America, the squadron had been engulfed by a hurricane, and the Wager was believed to have sunk with all its souls. But 283 days after the ship had been reported seen, these men miraculously emerged in Brazil. They had been shipwrecked on a desolate island off the coast of Patagonia. Most of the officers and crew were perished, but 81 survivors had set out in a makeshift boat, lashed together partly from the wreckage of the Wager. Packed so tightly on board that they could barely move, they travelled through the menacing gales and tidal waves, through ice storms and earthquakes. More than 50 men died during the arduous journey, and by the time the few remnants reached Brazil, 3.5 months later, they had traversed nearly 3,000 miles, one of the longest castaway voyages ever recorded. They were hailed for their ingenuity and bravery. As the leader of the party noted, it was hard to believe that human nature could possibly support the miseries that we have endured. 6 months later, another boat washed ashore, this one landing in a blizzard off the southwestern coast of Chile. It was even smaller, a wooden dugout propelled by a sail stitched from the rags of blankets. On board were 3 additional survivors, and their condition was even more frightful. They were half naked and emaciated. Insects swarmed over their bodies, nibbling on what remained of their flesh. One man was so delirious that he had quite lost himself, as a companion put it, not recollecting our names or even his own. After these men recovered and returned to England, they levelled a shocking allegation against their companions who had surfaced in Brazil. They were not heroes, they were mutineers. In the controversy that followed, with charges and countercharges from both sides, it became clear that while stranded on the island, the Wager's officers and crew had struggled to persevere in the most extreme circumstances. Faced with starvation and freezing temperatures, they built an outpost and tried to recreate naval order. But as their situation deteriorated, the Wager's officers and crew, those supposed apostles of the Enlightenment, descended into a Hobbesian state of depravity. There were warring factions and marauders and abandonments and murders. A few of the men succumbed to cannibalism. Back in England, the principal figures from each group, along with their allies, were now summoned by the Admiralty to face a court-martial. The trial threatened to expose the secret nature not only of those charged, but also of an empire self-possessed mission with spreading civilization. Several of the accused published their sensational and wildly conflicting accounts of what one of them called the dark and intricate affair. The philosophers Rousseau, Voltaire, and Montesquieu were influenced by reports of the expedition, and so later were Charles Darwin and 2 of the great novelists of the sea, Herman Melville and Patrick O'Brian. The suspect's main aim was to sway the Admiralty and the public. A survivor from one party composed what he described as a faithful narrative, insisting, "I've been scrupulously careful not to insert one word of untruth, for falsities of any kind would be highly absurd in a work designed to rescue the author's character." The leader of the other side claimed in his own chronicle that his enemies had furnished an imperfect narrative and blackened us with the greatest calumnies. He vowed, "We stand or fall by the truth. If truth will not support us, nothing can." We all impose some coherence, some meaning on the chaotic evidence of our existence. We rummage through the raw images of our memories, selecting, burnishing, erasing. We emerge as the heroes of our stories, allowing us to live with what we have done or haven't done. But these men believed their lives depended on the stories they told. If they failed to provide a convincing tale, they could be secured to a ship's yardarm and hanged. Sounds intriguing, doesn't it? So, something happened down there in the South Seas. We'll move into part 1, which is entitled The Wooden World, and chapter 1, The First Lieutenant. And that will be in a separate recording. So follow me there soon to enjoy The Wager.